It was 2007, and I am an 18-year-old female, a college student from Laramie County, Wyoming. Late one night, I had been partying hard and decided to walk home by myself. The party had been at a friend's apartment, and a walk home would lead me through the rougher part of town. But as I'd had a drink or two at the time, I really didn't consider the dangers of my route. Let me make it clear now that I rarely drink alcohol, as I'm fearful of my father and my church finding out. I clattered loudly down the pavement, not taking too much notice of my surroundings, but I was aware that the streets around me were mostly empty, aside from a character looming behind me. "Could you spare some change?" I heard a voice say from a very close proximity. I stopped and turned around. It was a man, maybe of about 50 years old. He explained that he was a recovering glue sniffer and needed cash to get home, as he had somehow lost it all. I'm always one to help people, so I pulled out my purse in front of him and allowed him to take what he needed. He hurriedly stepped closer and took out two $10 bills. The smell of stale odor was thick, and I struggled not to take a step away from him. He smirked as he stuffed the notes into his pocket and shuffled away, nearly colliding with the wall. As I watched him walk away, I couldn't help but feel sorry for him, so I ran back. "Sir, let me help you get home. I want you to get home safely," I said to him. I would find out shortly that his name was Benno. After finding a taxi and riding it to his apartment, he showed me to his door. It led to a small, musty home above a convenience store. He slumped into his chair and immediately reached towards the homemade glue huffing kit. He had a plastic grocery bag, some tubing, and some cheap but potent glue. Before I could understand what was happening, he was sniffing the glue. I had sat down on the couch to make sure he was okay when he offered me the bag. "Here, try a huff," Benno announced in a strung-out voice. The look on his eyes indicated to me that he didn't know what the hell was going on. I'd be surprised if he knew which way was up or down right now. I was sleepy and wanted today to be over already, and the curiosity had gotten the better of me. Without knowing what I was doing, I held the thick tubing between my hands and sniffed with all my might. Fast forward 2 years now. Benno and me had gotten married. My parents had been reticent at first, but had eventually welcomed Benno into the family. I had graduated college and was working 2 jobs. By day, I worked as an intern at a local newspaper, and in the evenings, I was a cleaner at a local nightclub. I would get home and find Benno asleep on the floor, his glue bag next to him. At the start of our relationship, I had suggested that he stop with the solvents, but he had rejected the idea, and claimed that I was trying to change him. After seeing him spaced out on glue every 2 days or so, I was beginning to question our marriage, and even my friends were starting to grow concerned when they witnessed him throw a dinner plate at me because the dinner was too cold. We would get divorced shortly after the violence began, but that wouldn't stop Benno from seeing me. I would look out through the window from work and see him standing in the park from time to time, staring straight up at me, a rucksack on his back. I knew that in his back was his precious glue. I had moved back to my parents' house, and life was looking good. I had started dating again, and days went by at a time when I wouldn't even think about Benno. But one night, I was watching a movie with my girlfriends when I heard a noise in the backyard. I cautiously opened the curtains and saw a figure in the darkness. I screamed. Who was this person in the backyard? I told my friends, and one of them dialed 911. We waited a scary 20 minutes until the police finally came. They searched the spacious backyard and found nothing but an empty tube of glue. Had it been Benno? Had my ex-husband been stalking me as I had been getting it on with my friends, as we've been enjoying such a nice evening? It's been a week now, and I've not seen a sight of him. I can assume that he's moved on with his life. Or has he? Story 2. I was male, in my early teens, and it was around 1993, give or take a year. The evenings were drawing short. Myself and 2 good friends, Alan and Tim, had been mucking around as usual. Back in those days we would spend our evenings on the streets, either chasing around, walking aimlessly, or just having a general laugh. One evening we'd been on a journey to the local supermarket to buy video games magazines. On the way to the shop it had been daylight, but by the time we decided to come back, the sky had darkened to near black. The most direct route home had been the path that runs alongside the woodland. We had been teasing each other like usual, trying to scare each other with pushes or sudden shouts, acts that always ended up in initial hysteria and then laughter. The path was lit occasionally by streetlights, but there were long stretches that remained in the dark. At one point we stopped for some reason to talk. One of us looked into the woodland and shouted, "What the hell is that?" We all looked into the woods and saw a shape amongst the dark trees. It was light, white even perhaps, elongated and perhaps triangular. After a second or two it moved. I guess the best description is that it turned towards us. Could it have been a face? I don't know, but there were lines and markings on it, perhaps the markings of a ghostly face. Perhaps a mouth and eyes, but we didn't stay around long enough to take note of the detail. One of us shouted an exclamation, and we all sprinted up the path, certain that the thing that we had seen was giving us chase. We were panicked and scared, but also exhilarated. This was the first time that the scare had been real after all of our evenings of trying to spook each other out in the dark. I wasn't about to go back to this place again.